Alright, everybody, for the first critical thought of 2023, we're going to go with something very easy. And I'm going to break down over today's episode what is the difference between analyzing a game versus reviewing it, and how this can make you better at game design and better at just studying what video games are. So as I said in the stinger, when we talk about video game analysis, this is something that is kind of still treated as this mysterious thing that it's very hard to put into words. A lot of people treat the analysis side as the same as a review, and that's not necessarily true. Both have very similar skill sets, but they have different goals and different functions. And over the course of however long this video is, hopefully I'll be able to make you all into better video game analysts. So the first point that is very simple, as I just said, is that analysis is not the same as a review. A reviewer's job is to explain why would the consumer like this game. Usually reviewers are going to be people who are well versed in the genre, who understand it, who understand the fan base. An analyst's job is to explain, did this game succeed? Did the developer's intent come through? And with that point, the consumer is kind of second or third down the line. While consumers can certainly, I hope with the pieces I put here, can get value out of it, this is more important from a developer and a design point of view. And it's why when you're learning about video game analysis, it's not necessarily going to help you become the next great big YouTuber or game journalist, or get a job at a major site like an IGN, Kotaku, and so on. But the reason why this matters, as I'll talk about over this video, is that this is how you start to improve your own sense at analyzing video games. And a lot of people, even if they are in the industry, may not necessarily have built up these skills. It's not something that you can just turn on one day. And even if you've been playing video games all your life, if you've been playing them competitively or professionally all your life, if you've been designing them for most of your life, that doesn't mean you've actually been studying design. And when you start looking at this, it really does change your point of view as to how a game is made, how does it play, and will help you for sure when you're trying to build your own title. So the first trap that I want to talk about are the spiral effects, whether it is overly positive or overly negative. This is something that we see from a lot of YouTube essayists, journalists writing these massive pieces, and so on. That the second a game loses them, the entire game is done. And you'll see this in a lot of these pieces where the second they say they don't like something or if the review is negative, everything is negative. I hate the music, I hate the art, this gameplay is horrible, nothing works right. There is nothing really there to kind of weight it. And we see this a lot when people find a game that they don't like. And I'll be certainly coming back to that point in the next few minutes. But another common tell we see in this point is that they will try and compare the game to another title or another franchise that they love. And that franchise or that game may have similar problems. It may even have its own share of problems. But of course, that is fine because that's a game that they like. It's bad over here because this is a game that we don't like. And you want to avoid this. And as I said, a lot of this comes back to developer intent and how that is different from the consumer mindset. But before we get to that point, the opposite end of the spectrum is the overly positive spiral. This is, I like this game, so it is the perfect game. And how dare you tell me or say that you don't like it? What's wrong with you? And we see people will come at some of these games with just full on, there is nothing wrong with this game. If there's any problems, it's not from the game, it's the consumer's fault that they don't like it. And just saying those words is just stabbing me right here in my chest. And another popular thing that's said in these essayists is that, well, game design is hard. If it's, if you think you know better, why don't you just build your game? But, this is a perfect game. And again, that's another phrase I'll be coming back to in the next few minutes. But one of the major aspects of being able to analyze games is kind of putting yourself out of the equation. Because another trap that people fall into is this idea that if I'm having fun, then the game must be great. If I'm not having fun, then the game is terrible, horrible, it must be changed, broken, get it out of here. As I said a second ago, when it comes to the positivity spiral, we've seen a lot of people, especially fans, over the past 15 to 20 years, have been making more fan-related mods, fan games, partial full conversion mods, the whole deal. And some of these get turned into full games or licensed DLC, such as the Rainworld, Downpour one that we played very frequently on the channel. But the problem is that when a fan makes a game or makes content for other fans, there's this tendency to go into it with blinders on. That I am designing this as someone who finds this game perfect. So any issues, anything like that, we're not touching. And you'll find that for a lot of fan games like this or fan-related content, it is always noticeably harder than the base game, and oftentimes lacks basic onboarding and UI UX that could have been in the base title. A good example of a mod or a patch from a fan that really did a lot of work was, of course, DS Fix. That was basically someone going in and saying, these are all the problems with Dark Souls on PC, how can we fix as many of them as we can? And it was so popular, it became recommended by the store page to have it. And that is very important when it comes to game analysis, and it's something that's going to pop up several times in this video. That you need to understand that a game can be good, and a game can also be bad. And returning to the point about fun and not fun, again, a lot of people will put their own opinion into an analysis. And when you're trying to analyze a game versus review it, you want to come at it from a place of as neutral as you can reasonably make it. Because a good analyst can play and look at any video game of any genre, whether they like, hate, despise it, don't care about it, it doesn't matter. They are able to look at this genre and be able to talk about what this design is all about. And I've said this plenty of times before. It's easy to do a review or make a video about a game that you love. How many people have made 20-minute, hour-long videos declaring how much they love Elden Ring, or how much they love Doom Eternal or Ultra Kill? That's great. Try to do the same thing for a game that you hate, and that is a different story. So for me, I don't like survival crafters. The genre does not work for me. 7 Days to Die, DayZ, Subnautica, V Rising, Valheim, I don't like those games. But I know exactly what those core gameplay loops are. I can explain to someone exactly why they would like these games. And that is a very underappreciated skill when it comes to analysis. Because like I said, I can play a genre that even I have no experience in. I am horrible at it. But I can still understand the underlying mechanics and systems that go with it. And because of that, I can talk about this game and explain to someone why it works, or why it may not work. There are some survival crafters that just go completely against the grain. I may enjoy them, but guess what? They may not be the #1 survival crafter on the market, and that's okay. Now, another trap when it comes to analyzing games I want to touch on briefly is the retro trap. This idea that looking at games 15, 20, 30 years ago, whatever, that they're treated kind of differently than some of the other games. There are some people who will cover these games trying to go into it with an already preconceived bias. All old platformers were horrible. All games before 1999 were perfect. And it is good study, or it's a good test of your ability to look back at some of these classic games and see if you can understand the design processes behind them. But you don't want to go into it with already the mindset, oh, every NES game is horrible, or every PC game, again, pre-DLC and day one patching was perfect and bug-free, and right now I'm driving a knife into a lot of developers watching this by uttering those words. But there's a tendency from some people to paint the game industry as kind of these tabloid catch-alls. All video games are this. All games are about that. And a lot of them tend to ignore the independent space. And that's a really important point. If you won't call yourself an analyst or an expert when it comes to game design, you have to play a lot of indie games. Maybe not 900 games like I did in 2022, but you do have to play more than at least 2. But you want to avoid kind of looking at an old game through the lens of modern design. There's a difference between saying, this game that came out 20 years ago is horrible because all these games did this stuff better before they were even existed back then, versus saying, this game did this X, Y, and Z, but we found out that better systems and more things evolved over the course of the evolution of the genre. And some people, again, will try and paint things, I think, with too broad of a discussion. Trying to do a video or a piece saying, have you ever realized Mario games have poor stories? Or can you believe how violent Doom is? It gives us as much value as having a dissertation about why you think water is wet or why the summertime is hot. But with that said, the most important thing you want to be able to study, and kind of your goal, is you want to try and figure out what the developer's intent was. And does the design either facilitate that, or does it get in the way of it? And that, my friends, takes us to the ever-popular topic, UI UX. User interface and user experience. When you start analyzing games, these are the 2 points that you are going to home in on when it comes to video games, and why game analysis or game design analysis is so important. Because UI UX is oftentimes either the major selling point of a game or the major failure of a game that a lot of people don't necessarily understand. Return to my point a few minutes ago about fan games or over positivity. UI UX is the one spot where fans are horrible at helping you as a designer. Because fans will internalize any issues, any problems, anything like that, and just say, well, that's just part of the learning curve. You don't want to spend 5 hours being confused, and you're obviously not a fan. You don't deserve this game. But I'll be doing another video most likely about churn rates and how to spot them. But the point here is that if you want to improve as a designer and improve your own gameplay, you need to understand why someone stops playing a game. And that takes me to a very salient point for this video. Every game is horrible to someone. Vampire Survivors, Death Stranding, Stray, Elden Ring, Doom, Ultra Kill. They're all horrible for someone. There is no such thing as a universally appealing game. And that is alright. Everyone has their favorite games, everyone has their least favorite games. One person's game of the year is another person's game they wouldn't touch if it was free with a 100-foot pole. And one of the things you need to understand about game analysis and how it differs from everything else is a very simple point. Just because you like a game doesn't mean it's a great title. Just as if you hate a game doesn't mean it's a bad game. And this again gets back at this point of intent. Being able to figure out, who is this game aimed for? Does it work for that audience? Are there things that stop it from either attracting fans or repelling new people? Because these are the major aspects that lead to people quitting a game, and why a lot of games that tend to suffer happen within the first 20 to 30 minutes of playing, maybe even less than that. And these are the aspects of game analysis that are worth its weight in gold. Being able to look at a title and figure out, okay, these areas are horrible. They are why so many people are quitting your game. How do we change that? Can we make your game easier to parse? If we can, maybe people will be more likely to stick around. If you're losing 80% of your player base within 30 minutes, I don't care if the remaining 20% say your game is perfect. They are wrong. Something has gone terribly not right, and you are going to have to try and correct that. So to wrap up this critical thought, being able to analyze a game is a very useful skill when it comes to broadening your own understanding of design. And once you start doing this, you tend to realize what aspects lead to a game's success, and why would someone want to just quit a game. This is why I don't typically like to put review scores on a lot of the pieces I do here. Because one person's 9 out of 10 is another person's 1 out of 10, and vice versa. And it's more interesting to me, or more interesting for me, to be able to understand what is this game trying to do, and what is helping it, and what's getting in the way of it. So here's my quiz for all of you watching this. As I said, the hallmark of being able to analyze games is being able to get out of your own head or out of your own sense of judging. Just because you hate or like a game doesn't mean that game is bad, good, or whatever. So here's a little test for you. I want you to take your game of the decade of the 2010s or your game of the year of 2022. I want you to write a piece explaining why would someone hate to play this game. And I don't mean write this as a troll, this game is stupid, buttons are red instead of blue, so everyone hates it. I mean, I want you to come at this as someone trying to play this game, and all the pain points, all the difficulty spikes, all the UI UX problems. I want you to put that into words. Because when you start understanding that even your favorite games, the ones that you would die on a metaphorical or literal hill to defend, has problems to them, that's going to start changing how you look at video games. And for anyone trying to design a game, especially if you're trying to work in a new genre or study a genre, this is where analysis comes into play. And again, these are some of the tips, or these are some of the aspects that we see out of some of the major companies like Nintendo or Blizzard in their heyday. Being able to sit down and say, we like all this about this game, these issues are annoying us. How do we reinvent the wheel? How do we iterate on these designs and make it our own? Because as we've said many times over, if you're trying to work in a genre and you are having all the same problems and all the mistakes that were in another game, people are not going to give your game the time of day. But if you are able to use analysis and figure out how to make a genre better, how to make it more palatable, improve its design by studying it and other genres, that is a unique selling point if I ever did hear one. So with that said, I expect all those analysis pieces on my desk by Monday. They should be at least minimum 5,000 words, so please get them in. If you're new, do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. Check out the Discord and Patreon. If you're interested in my books on design, they are available wherever books are being sold. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.